And that's right. Star Trek, the original series, season 3, episode 1 or 6, depending on what system you go by, of Spectre of the Gun is over and has been since 1968. But we're just getting started here tonight on Live Long and Podcast. We're going to bring in our panel here. First, introducing the namesake of the podcast, the Ted Treks themselves, is my dad, Ted. How you doing, Dad?
I'm doing great.
That's good.
I'm locked.
And also bringing in my brother, your other son, Jeff Mader. Let's bring that in. How you doing, Jeff?
Good. You excited to talk about the OK Corral?
On the OK Corral here on this Christmas Eve. We are missing Jody Simpson, who is out. He's not feeling too well. We hope you feel better soon, Jody. And Adam Woodward sends his regrets, although he did send a rating. So we will get to his rating on this episode when we dive into that. But let's talk about this episode, Spectre of the Gun, the very beginning of season 3. And this is an episode where some aliens throw Kirk, Spock, Scotty, Chekhov, and McCoy into the OK Corral as as a death sentence for defying them, and that's kind of the whole premise of the episode. A lot to talk about, I think, in this one, I couldn't watch this movie and not think of the movie Tombstone.
Yeah, well, there's also a movie called Wyatt
from what 1991.
There's also a movie
I think
called
it
Wyatt
was.
Earp, which came out, I think, in 1992. They were very, very fond of this story in the early 90s.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was I think it's worth talking about the legend of Wyatt Earp, the OK Corral, which is such a huge piece of this story. And I think also worth kind of mentioning that I don't think a lot of people today know who Wyatt Earp is anymore, but of the younger generations. But it was definitely a story, a legend that was very prolific in the American mindset in the 1960s. Oh, we got Jody who says, "Have a good show, everyone. I'll join you on the next one. We'll see you then, Jody. We hope you feel better. Feel free to chime me a rating. But Dad, you were alive when this episode was made, and you grew up in it, I guess, long before us. So talk to me about the story of Wyatt Earp, the OK Corral, and the Clanton gang. Was this like a story you knew a lot growing up?
Boy. Well, we knew about it. I mean, we didn't know a lot about it, but we knew about it.
What did you know?
It's a legendary cowboy.
Who is?
What did I know?
What was your perception of it? What did you know? Yeah.
That Wyatt Earp was a good guy, and he shot him and his team shot all the bad guys, i.e. the Clanton gang. So Wyatt Earp was a legendary good guy.
Horse thieves,
which is very similar to very similar to
legendary
like
lawman.
The Hateful Eight. I feel like tried to kind of like go along the same lines too. Like you got the hateful lawman, and you got the bad gang, and the Dufresne gang or whatever they're called in the Hateful Eight. So you got a lot of these stereotypes I find with the Old West. The gang against the marshals.
Right. But what I thought was interesting about this episode of Star Trek that references this is that they kind of present the Earps as villains. That the town folk were just as happy to see the Clanton gang win this gunfight as the Earps, because depending on who you were, you might be aligned with one faction or the other in this Old West setting. Is that accurate? Because the movie I saw, Tombstone, with Kurt Russell, made it to present that the Earps were more sort of morally, like they were on the higher ground. They were the lawmen. They were the good guys, and the Clantons were the bad guys. But
I think
history is written by the.
I think you can slant it either way, but from which side of the fence that you're on, and which side you take. For example, in this, obviously they got to be the Clantons because the Clantons lost that fight. So
history is written by the victor, right?
Yes. So they were made to be the Clantons, and they were that was their sentence basically, is that they were going to have to face the music with the Wyatt Earp and the boys. But
Yeah, this is a real photo here from the actual cemetery where some of those Clantons are buried. And you can, well, here, actually the logo's just covering it a little bit there, but you can see it says Billy Clanton, Tom McClory, Frank McClory murdered in the streets of Tombstone, 1881, according to this marker.
Yeah, so there's a whole other argument that the Clanton gang weren't necessarily, they were maybe bad guys, but they hadn't done anything wrong, or they hadn't had evidence or proof that they'd done anything wrong. But the lawmen just kind of went in and forced a confrontation and killed them. And this was talked about at the time, and there was an investigation, and they said no, they acted within the law, was what they said. So, but that's what happens when the police investigates the police.
Well, and later on, what happened was that one of the Earp brothers was ganged down by a member of the Clanton gang that wasn't killed, some who never was identified, but apparently in like a drive-by shooting of sorts, or a ride-by shooting.
And that would have been the Chekhov character, Billy Clanton. That would, or Billy, what's his name? It wasn't Clanton, but that was the guy Chekhov played, who didn't get killed in the OK Corral.
William Claiborne.
Because
there's William Claiborne and there's Billy Clanton, who Scotty was meant to represent Billy, the other Billy,
and he would have been killed.
But
Scotty would have been killed.
Yeah, this sounds a lot like Chicago Gangland Wars, or like any kind of gangland wars in sort of modern, like Crips and Bloods, whatever. Doesn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, kind of. Like it's basically like the law coming in and putting their boot down, and kind of taking over the law and order of the town. In the front, this is a frontier town in the Old West where the law was murky, and it was getting toward the end of the century, 1881, and the U.S. government was starting to take control and have more of a presence at that time. So but the purpose in this episode, it seems like this alien entity, this thing they discover, this thing,
the Metro, or what's it called?
Another paper mache masterpiece.
Melconian.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it.
Melkoshian.
That's it.
Melkoshian. Okay. Anyway, so I think the whole point of the episode is that this is a test to see if they're murderous, if they have murder in their heart, and basically that's the whole test, right?
Jeff, explain this first part of this episode to me, because it starts off with the Enterprise is just kind of going along, and they say, "Oh, something's like following us or something," right? And so they investigate it, and they say, "Hey, don't come any further. This is our territory." And Kirk gives the order to keep going. Why?
I don't know. Just because it was interesting, probably, and he wants to investigate. That's what captains do.
But shouldn't he respect their wishes?
Weird. It was too weird. Like, they're probably in the middle of the Alpha Quadrant. They know where they are. They weren't like, I don't feel like they were like way on the boonies. I had no idea where they were. I think they were like, this is weird. Let's go investigate. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe you should.
Yeah, I guess. Like it's kind of like Kirk's like, no, we're keep going. And it's like they get to the planet and they're like, no, you didn't listen to us, and we're blaming you, Captain Kirk. And that's how they end up in the OK Corral situation. Question here from Captain RGD. Why do you think they stopped showing shadow over the characters' faces in dramatic moments?
Yeah, they were doing that more in season 1 and 2. Season 3, yeah, they kind of started to light things more properly. I don't know. I feel like that was just, I don't know, like a 60s TV trope where they did that, where they put that like light over their eyes for some reason.
Yeah, like Balance of Terror is a specific example I can think of where they're doing that a lot because it's meant to like show intensity, I guess, and sort of give you a perspective on
It probably looked different on a black and white or a tube TV as well. You know,
right. Yeah, you can see more of the definition. Is you're just looking at it in two colors. To your point, but Dad, what do you think?
Remember, in the '60s, a lot of the TVs were black and white too.
Right, but this is third season.
We didn't get colors to the '70s.
Well, this is practically the 70s. Like this is third season. By the end of the season,
yeah, it's before.
Halfway through.
I think 69. We got color in like 72, 71, 72. In our
well, they filmed this show in color because there definitely were people who had color.
There was. Oh yeah.
Right, but you also see here color in TV this season here we have.
You guys can't imagine that, like, but back then, when you got your first color TV. That was like a big thing.
I think this whole title here, like, look, this is the third season, right? This is when they went from the yellow titles to the blue titles, right? In terms of the title cards. And I think this whole fact that we have Spectre of the Gun here showing up on these guys in colorful shirts. It all ties into the fact that this was the dawn of color TV, and they wanted the show to stand out. That's why it looks
when they show up in the OK Corral, Arizona Tombstone. The like often in Star Trek the sky is like red, but like you really noticed it. I found like the whole sky is red. Is that shot on like a sound stage and they make it look like it, or like how do they shoot this?
Oh, absolutely. It was a soundstage. Do I have a couple shots? Yeah, you can kind of see one of the shots here. At one point, when the lightning is going, Jeff, you see the reflection of the trees from the lightning on like the sky.
Why do they choose sometimes to shoot on a soundstage? Star Trek's weird, and then sometimes they go out into like and shoot on locations. You know, like
location.
It depends on the planet they're on.
I guess, yeah. They could have just went to Arizona, but then I'm guessing they wanted it to all.
You know, it's. Do you notice that they didn't have to change to look like the Clantons. They just kept their own look, right?
Yeah.
Even
except for the gun.
The way the other guys saw them was like the Clantons,
right?
Yeah, they did this. They did this more. They did this again in Star Trek many times, like where the rest of the people see you as you are, or see you for what they think you are, what character you're playing in the story, but everybody you see yourself for what you are. It's yeah. And that even this whole like the design of this episode with like the surreal look is kind of it's very different. They talked about it's incomplete and like that's only the door and where's the rest of the building, and so this is not meant to represent Tombstone, Arizona. Like actually, it's almost like a dream of what Tombstone, Arizona would be. It's like an incomplete picture. And I think also to your question, Jeff, why? Yeah. Go ahead.
It was interesting that when they heard the first message from the alien, that they all heard it in their own language.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about this alien, Dad. What do you think of this alien?
Well, he looks a little bit like Kermit the Frog with glassy eyes and
he looks like a paper mache.
Don't you think?
You think he's?
No, he looks like a paper. It looks like they took a basketball,
kind of,
put a bunch of paper mache around it, and then stuck some lights in. It's so crude.
A fog machine.
It's like one of those crude things I've seen them do.
It's kind of funny. It's a little bit like that other one. You gotta think
There's
about
a delay
it.
With you, Dad. So you keep cutting me off.
Why is it delayed for him?
It's because of the delay, Dave. I'm getting you on delay by 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
Well, I'm you too. So
me and Dave are fine.
Yeah,
so it's we're talking.
It's my laptop.
No, is it? Oh, it's just your computer, not your internet.
I think it's because I'm getting delayed off the server.
Off the server. Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, like Jeff asked, why maybe this is lower production value, and my understanding of the third season too is that everybody got raises, like Shatner and Nimoy and like a lot of the cast, they got raises, but they didn't cut the budget for the episode. So that meant more money for actors, less money to go on location, less money to do special effects, to make aliens. So you see the more corners being cut in this season.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it shows here in this episode. Yeah, like basically they went to one of the old West shows that were probably filming at that time, and they were like, "Hey, can we use your soundstage for like a couple days to shoot this episode?" They're like, "Sure, we're off for Christmas, so sounds good."
Yeah, because they've been at better locations than this.
Oh yeah, for
like
sure, especially in the earlier seasons. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like it feels like they're not trying as hard.
They definitely. Well, I just don't think they could. I think that they were limited by money, and whatever. And I think that the writing even kind of where am I going? Suffered for it. And also, I don't know if you guys noticed in the first few minutes of this episode, but Shatner was looking rough. Every time we have a third season episode, I'm like, Shatner is not looking good. He looks like he's drinking hard. During this period.
I don't know. He looks fine. Like his.
I don't know.
I didn't really notice it.
Compared to season 2 and 1.
Yeah, I guess so. He looks more like the later Shatner, I guess, a little bit. Yep. Body type and stuff.
Yeah, he's turning into later Shatner, yes. Like a few of them like really changed who they were as they aged. Like Nimoy not so much, and like a few of them
Doohan became kind of stayed, Walt Disney, a fat Walt Disney. Right.
And they all got older, but like it was just like Shatner almost turned into a different person in his after his 40th birthday. But that's neither here nor there. We talked about the Makoshin and the fact that they all heard in their native language. Yeah, good point, Dad. Like the Swahili, the Russian, and the Vulcan, meaning that Spock learned Vulcan first. And that Uhura is a Swahili native speaker.
Yeah, like this is what I wish they would kind of do this a little bit more in Star Trek. Is it like show us how, like if like have an episode where the universal translator breaks, right? Like I really wish original series that did this, because then Uhura could have been a really, really important character, because she could have maybe spoken all these different languages, like Vulcan, like if Spock can only speak Vulcan or whatever, and if they have another alien that they're talking to, and that a Klingon, and that Klingon can only speak Klingon, that type of thing. I think that would have been a really kind of interesting episode for them to have done, because like if Chekhov can only speak Russian and he's speaking Russian, and like Kirk has no idea what the hell he's saying, and Scotty's he's Scottish, but so he's fine. You know what I mean? Like,
do that that's definitely what Star Trek Enterprise did a lot of. Like that's basically what they made the Hoshi character in Star Trek Enterprise, being like the language expert.
Yes.
Right? Because that before universal translators were sort of the norm, as they will become. That's kind of why it's not as much of a thing about this Uhura, I guess. But then we saw in like the reboot Uhura, who's played by Zoe Saldana, she is that. She's kind of like a mashup of the Hoshi and Uhura and this Uhura, who's a communications officer, but also a linguistics and morphology expert. Anyway, Dad, any thoughts on that?
Anyway, the Clanton boys were
boys. Yes,
they were stagecoach robbers, murderers, and they were known as the Cowboys. That's the name of their band was known as the Cowboys.
Yeah, the Cowboys. Yeah.
And they were murderers and stagecoach robbers and cattle rustlers. They did.
Who did they murder?
Oh, just anybody who came along that they want to rob or steal their cattle.
I see. Okay, well, there's different accounts of this, but this was kind of like you see this in a lot of these old West stories. Like, who was the one who killed the coward Robert Ford, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and all of that, and there being sort of different factions because in 1881, Arizona is not a state, right? It's just the Arizona Territory, and it's kind of like it's. What they'd say the Old West, it was kind of a lawless place where you had like a handful of law people but it was very much like people could do kind of whatever they wanted. Like these towns were very much isolated, and morality was gray.
That's why
you
they
know.
brought a sheriff, and the sheriff was Wyatt Earp. That's why they had a
No,
sheriff to
he was a
protect.
marshal.
Yeah,
Well,
he
he
There's
was
a difference.
a sheriff. Yeah,
This
He was
guy's
a
the
sheriff.
sheriff.
no, he was U.S. Marshal.
No, Wyatt Earp is a
Yeah,
marshal,
they're U.S. Marshals.
isn't he?
They're like Tommy
Um,
Lee Jones.
But this guy I have on screen. He's not one of their gang.
no.
No, he's.
He's the sheriff.
This is like, okay, this is what I said earlier. This is around the time when the federal government was starting to realize they needed to start sending federal police out there, because like a sheriff, if you know, he's only gonna have so much power, you know, over if there's more gang members than there's police, then they're not gonna be able to do much, right?
Right.
So
But he's friends with the gang member.
yeah, well, you have to be then, and that, especially when it's a lawless town, and that was what was happening at that time. So they were sending in the feds, you know, to clean everything up. That was basically what was going on.
Right. Would you buy it, Jeff? Do you think that maybe that the Earps were just as bad as the Clantons? Maybe.
Well, they probably were, but they were, you know, like you said, the history is written by the victors, and the Earps are the victors. So they got to write the story.
True. And did you like the surrealism, like this whole thing with this kind of set place? Like do you think it's better for this, Jeff, or do you think it's worse with this, like
with this episode?
Yeah, or versus if they had gone to a real sort of, maybe like that place that they had done the Landrew episode. Remember that, where they were that was more like an old West town, right?
It kind of works for the episode because of like what their premise, that this alien set them in this kind of area to like a rats in a maze, like it's a test and they have to figure it out. So it kind of did work the soundstage in that way, but the episode just seems very quiet. There's like very little music. There's just little things like that stood out to me. Like it was kind of paced oddly in that way. There was kind of like the Chekhov love stuff, and then he gets killed, and then are we supposed to like really believe he's really dead? I think at that time, yes. I think that's what they were going for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. On first viewing, you're supposed to believe that Chekhov is dead.
Yeah.
And he's a character you might. And this is an interesting meme I saw today, and quote from kind of when they first realized when on the planet where they are, what's going on, because Scotty and Chekhov, and I think Bones, even for that matter, they don't know the story of Tombstone, do they? Or like certainly Scotty and Chekhov.
How Spock knew everything, which why? Why did he know?
Yeah, I'm always confused about Spock knows a ton about Earth and humans, and yet they need to explain certain things to him sometimes, or he asks questions, which I think are kind of dumb, especially at the end here where he says, "But Kirk, you did want to kill, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did want to, but I didn't." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah, that was weird. That was Spock. Yeah, Kirk was like, "Yeah, you're right, and I did want to kill that guy, but I didn't. You know." Yeah, we're good now, right? I mean, people, pretty good. We might.
Right. And this quote was, curious how often you humans manage to obtain that which you do not want. Sure. Sure. Like, well, COVID sometimes too. But just on that. Yeah, like I think that I actually like this episode in terms of just like, okay, we're in the Old West and we got to figure our way out, and it's problem solving at its core. Is how does these five guys, how do they solve their way out of it? And they try whole kinds of things, right? They try to like negotiate, they try to get information, they try to make a tranquilizer, they try to make some kind of a booby trap at some point. Nothing's working. And it's really, we'll get to it, but they eventually figure out that they just have to convince themselves that it's an illusion, and that's kind of the solution.
Spock figured that out.
Well, yeah, like they're like Spock without Spock there, and especially without the mind melds that Spock has to do to sort of get them through this this encounter they have with the ERPs. They would have been done. This is another example of like MVP Spock on the crew of the original series.
That's right.
It's not
Yeah.
Kirk does nothing
No.
really effectual in this episode at all, except give
No.
orders, which is what his job is. And okay, who else we had? Let's talk about just these people that we meet in the town. Okay, so we talked about this girl that Chekhov was his character, or whoever he was supposed to be, William Claiborne.
Billy.
Was in love with.
He was Billy Claiborne.
He was Billy Claiborne, not to be confused with Billy Clanton. And she's like, well, Sylvia, but there is another member of the Clantons that want her, or no, the Earps who want her. Which way? It was this guy. He was like, why don't you draw already? I don't know which Earp he was meant to be.
Virgil.
Draw your gun. Virgil, who I think was played by Sam Elliott, maybe in the Tombstone movie, which is the one I always think of. And so, yeah, but they come across as like cold-blooded psychos in this.
He got killed playing pool a few years later.
Sam Elliott played Virgil in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was Wyatt.
And so this is Doc Holliday. This is Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday, I'm your Huckleberry.
Val Kilmer,
as played by Val Kilmer in the movie. They made him quite older here, actually, compared to that version. This is supposed to be Wyatt Earp on screen here. He looked like kind of an interesting look for him, I thought. And this was the other one. He was get yourselves out of town by 5 o'clock, but they can't get themselves out. They're trapped.
No.
Trapped. I'd be scared if these guys were coming at me with guns. They seemed not too friendly. What else? Snake venom. So yeah, they make the tranquilizer, snake venom and cactus stuff. This is where Doc McCoy then goes to the dentist office and he gets some medicine. But guess what? Doc Holliday's there, and Doc Holliday, he's not having any of McCoy's stuff because McCoy is supposed to be Tom McLowry, one of the people who did die at the OK Corral. It's pretty. It's intimidation.
Just like we've only done about half the episodes though, right, Dave? Like of Star Trek so far, the original series. We've been to ancient Greece. We've been to Nazi Germany. We've been to the Old West. We've been. Where else have we been? We've been to the Chicago in the 1920s. We've been to a lot of different historical moments throughout history, and this only happened.
NASA.
Where? NASA.
Yes, but to your point, Jeff, yeah, they don't spend a lot of time going to other planets that have.
They don't spend a lot of time exploring the universe that is set up that they have with the Tellarites and the Andorians. They do like 1 or 2 episodes with that, but they really don't do a lot. I mean, most of it is like, hey, the crew is like, wants to go play dress up and go in the Old West today. That's kind of what they're doing a lot in the original series, and it's interesting because they do it in like TNG, and they definitely do that stuff, but they spend more time on like the world that they're in.
Yeah, I think really when the show comes down to is that it's the frontier, it's the final frontier, and it's dangerous, and it's trying to kill you, and it's something you almost have to sort of trek into, right? Like, kind of with blind faith to a certain extent, because it's more likely to go wrong than right. It's hard being out here, I think, is what they want to convey.
Yes, but
it'd be nice if they had like a feel good episode where they just did something like they saved some puppies or something. I don't know.
Right, that's true. At the same time, like, it just seems like they should be meeting the Romulans more and the Klingons more. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's all
Yeah.
Well, the Klingons they brought back quite a few times, but yeah, like in terms of, but we're looking at a specific sample here. We've done 37 episodes of like the 79, I think, and I don't know, like maybe we're just focusing on the ones that are more earthbound.
Maybe that's the case. Maybe we'll get more of them.
Dad, do you think you're picking episodes that are a little bit maybe have more of an Earth or some kind of reference to, I don't know, just non-science fiction stuff?
Maybe just because they're a little more familiar, but there's lots of science fiction ones as well. So it's a little bit of both.
That's true. There is episodes where they find like some crystal that's voiced by James Doohan, and then they you have to figure something out, But
but
there you go. That's the one.
They have a lot of episodes where they basically go to Earth or they go to some Earth adjacent thing, because it was just cost, and especially in this third season, you're only going to see more of that, or you're going to see not too much in the way of special effects. I think that's why maybe because we've only done a handful of third season episodes, but overall seasons 1 and 2. I should come up with like a cumulative by season ranking in terms of how our ratings are going. We talked about Dr. McCoy and Doc Holliday. I wrote here my notes. It's almost like watching a play because of like the sets and like the places, and there's no walls and it's only a door, and it's like you're kind of watching, you know what I mean? It's like you're watching something on stage, not real.
Yes. No, for sure. That's what the soundstage doesn't lend itself well to. There's no sounds. And then did you notice the ridiculous music in this episode and the sound effects? Especially like at one point it goes like whoop 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 whoop, and it's like what is going?
A little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of Star Trek episodes where they're brought to a place by an alien of some sort, and once they prove that they're not madmen and they're not want to kill everybody, the alien says, "Well, you're actually proved that," like the Gorn, for example, or this one, or and they put them in islands or places, and then they have to fight, and they go, "Yeah, you're not that bad after all."
Yeah, that's exactly right. Your dad, we've definitely seen this plot before.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that they did that kind of message and story so many times in original?
I think it was just probably easy, and that's what the writers, kept the familiarity of stories they knew versus creating new stories. So they used the stories they knew as the base, and then added like the little bit of the monster and the that icon or whatever it was floating in space.
The Melkoshian. Yeah, like it's I think it's to show that humans are become evolved, right? I think it's to also help you kind of remember this is set in the future, and that if somebody did this to you maybe today, you might not react properly. You may not say we come in peace if you feel that you have been attacked, right? Or your life has been put in danger. And I think it's almost like they want to set an example.
Yes.
But it could also be laziness.
They're trying to like prove a point, but because of their budgetary reasons, they have to do it, in a bottle episode way. So basically they want like you to like do what Spock does, which is challenge your reality. And like if the tranquilizer doesn't work, like why doesn't it work? That doesn't make any sense. Chekhov didn't die. He just didn't stop believing, he couldn't accept his reality, the reality of this not being real. Basically. It's kind of like Inception. It's kind of what happens at the end of this episode. Is like Spock has to go to all three, Scotty, Bones, and Kirk, and literally plant Inception in their brain, so that when the projections come, the Earp boys, the projections come through and start shooting at them, that it'll just hit the fence behind them, and that's exactly what happens. It's a gamble, but it's I think Spock uses logic here and effectively to get out of the situation. That made sense for Spock. Spock knowing what the hell the OK Corral was bullshit. They should have given that to Bones. Bones is the old Southern guy. He should have known that. They should have. They should have given him those.
Yeah. If anybody looks like a cowboy, it's him. Right. And DeForest Kelly did a ton of westerns. Talks like one too. Yeah, he's a cow. That was how he made his career as an actor before he did Star Trek. Was he just played cowboys mostly? Sometimes a couple other roles, but he worked with Gene Roddenberry on another show before this, a western.
Well,
I bet you a lot of these guys.
He actually, Dave, get this. He played Ike Clanton in a 1955 rendition called "You Are There," the gunfight at the OK Corral. And he also played Morgan Earp in Gunfight at the OK Corral. It came out in 1957. He was also offered a role in Hour of the Gun in 1967, the movie the episode is named after, but had to decline due to his Star Trek commitment.
So, don't worry, you won't be in the OK Corral movie. You're going to be in an episode where aliens have a bad version.
So explain to me again why Spock knew what the OK Corral was, but they couldn't give those lines to McCoy.
Well, you're right. I agree that or you could bring in another character like a historian, like they've done. Wouldn't this be? I don't know, because we don't actually see them go down to the planet, right? And then once the whole illusion is broken,
we see them go down, but we don't.
Yeah, Scotty says the transporter.
No, they go down in transporter.
Then why are they on the bridge when the illusion's broken?
I don't know. None of it made sense, Dave. None of it. The whole episode made no sense. In that
I don't know, but apparently they went down to the transporter.
Maybe they never did though. Maybe those five never even left the ship.
That's what they said, that they never left.
Well, yeah, but McCoy said your transporter must not be working right. So I have to assume from that they were there.
Yeah, they were on the ship the whole time.
Yeah, they never
all
left
their head.
The ship.
It was Inception. This is Star Trek's version of Inception. They were all asleep.
When the illusion's broken and Chekhov's alive again, and they go, "Why are you at your post?" And they say, "Well, he never left his post in the first place."
Yeah, because they were all in a telekinetic Inception dream sharing thing that they were doing together. That's what I think.
That makes sense. Then they thought they went.
These were the four people
but they never did.
Right. Yeah.
Right. They never actually leave. These are the four people that Kirk picks for the landing party, but they're not. They didn't go anywhere, I guess.
No. Well, remember the show at the city at the edge of forever when they were gone to find McCoy. And then when they showed back up, he says, "How long have you waited for us?" or something. He said, "You've only been gone a second." Right? So this could all have happened in literally a nanosecond, but it seemed like 2 hours to them.
Right. It seems to be the case because the rest of the crew time didn't pass for them, right? They say, as Kirk challenges Chekhov earlier in the episode, he's like, if you were on the ship and you couldn't find us, what would you be doing? And I would be scanning for you. But this explains why it's clear that the Enterprise wasn't looking for them, because just no time had gone by. And these Makoshans are clearly incredibly powerful telepaths. They're able to sort of manipulate mind and weird perception. And it's good that they're benevolent. It turns out that, they're sort of benevolent. They did try to execute these people, sort of. Or did they? Or did they just put them in a situation they had to get out of?
Yeah, they were threatening execution. But they weren't necessarily going to do that. They wanted to test these people to see if they were murderous, and then they maybe. I think that's the whole point.
Is this the original series version of Move Along Home from Deep Space Nine?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, sort of. Well, Move Along Home, though, is just a game. It's only just a game.
It's only a game. Was this a game, or was this? I don't know. Was it a test?
This is more like
Were they ever?
This is more like the original series episode, of the Q trial episode. where they put encounter in PowerPoint.
Or is it like the Next Generation episode, Jeff, where Q puts them into the Robin Hood situation?
Yeah, that too. It's kind of like a Q episode in a way. This episode,
right?
I think,
which makes you kind of wish that this wasn't the thing that does it. It was something a little bit more interesting than this.
It was like a child John Delaney, like an 8-year-old John Delaney or whatever, however old he would have been.
Or in that Clint Howard. I don't think you know what Kermit the Frog looks like.
Well, just the face, the way his face
was. Actually, he would have been 20. They could have used John Delancey.
John Delancey was around.
He was 20
at this
years
point?
old.
Yeah, but was he acting?
He started acting in 1975.
That's 7 years after this. So he wasn't an actor yet. But they could have been in Trelane, right? Or even a new character. Just even an actor whose lips move would have been fine if you painted them green or something. Anyway,
Trelane from the original series?
Yeah, from the Squire of Gothos.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay, so but we talked about the whole thing and everything else. The whiskey, they drink a lot of whiskey in this episode.
Scotty does.
Bourbon.
Scotty does. I don't know. That's all the plot points. So let's maybe just go back to this story of like the Clantons and everything else, because I think that's why I do like this episode, is all of the stuff I learn about this, because I don't think anybody's ever gonna. I just think that the idea, I think Westerns and the Old West and America's fascination with it is a 20th century thing. It's not a 21st century thing so much, I think, anymore, although we'll see.
This whole story became famous in 1931 with a book that was written
40
by
years.
a guy. In 1931, it became famous because what ended up happening was the Cowboys, which is the Clantons, they ganged up and killed 2 of the Earps. And then Wyatt Earp went on his own and to try and kill the rest of the Clantons, which he did. And then he escaped to California and he lived the rest of his life out in California. And then he became a hero in 1931. No one knew about it until then. It wasn't world famous.
But is he a hero? Isn't that vigilante justice?
It was.
Yeah. And 1931. So that's 50 years after these events.
Yeah.
He probably killed those guys in the 90s. 1890s.
In the 1890s.
Yeah.
Right. But over 50 years, can't a story become a legend? Can't there be like sort of glorifications put into that? Details,
I'm sure it could be. I'm sure it could be, and I'm sure that memories weren't as good 50 years later when probably an older man of a Wyatt Earp who was really old was telling this story to a bunch of writers who were writing the story, and maybe in the 20s, late 20s, and the story probably got,
They still
slanted.
reenact this battle every day in Tombstone. Well, maybe not in pandemic times. I'm not sure, but apparently this still goes on every day. They reenact this thing. We see the cemetery here
every day.
These are actually the 3 guys. Yeah, they reenact the event every day. It's like these are reenactors here on screen with us. But
3 Clantons died.
Well, no,
3 Clanton died. It was
gang.
4 versus 5, right?
2 McClorys.
Yeah.
Billy.
2 McClorys and a Clanton died.
And
both. So that would have been Bones and Spock's version, respective avatars.
Yeah.
Whereas Ike Clanton, Billy Clanton, and William Claiborne all survived. So Scotty, Chekhov, and Kirk's characters didn't die in this battle. But that's what is that they were all supposed to die here. Supposedly, it's kind of weird that they picked this
That's
about
right.
a bunch of guys who didn't all die, but that's what it's supposed to be. The whole thing is supposed to be about, that they have to die. It's inevitable. It would be better to like put them on like Titanic and they have to like get off the Titanic or something.
They didn't have the budget for that.
They didn't have the budget for that. Like something that they know they're all going to die, but they guess they wanted to do this Western thing. But yeah, those are the real guys who died right there in that old West photograph.
There they are.
Yeah, that's Billy.
Nice
It's the
costumes.
only picture of the Billy Connington, or what's his name? Billy Clanton. Billy Claiborne.
Billy Clanton.
No, there's pictures of them.
Yeah,
I've seen on the internet. There's pictures. If you Google like Clanton, you'll get pictures.
yeah. I would like and when I think of like the Clantons from the movie, who were like, it was like Powers Booth and a bunch of other like, guys, they were evil as hell. You were like, you're totally on Kurt Russell's side in that movie, and Val Kilmer, because they're the good guys, and they're trying to do very little, trying to do a lot with very little in terms of resources and manpower, because Doc Holliday was not even a cop. He was just a guy they deputized. He was just a friend of theirs who was dying of what do you call that? Consumption, tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
And a lot. He moved to Arizona because it's dry air and you wouldn't die of tuberculosis as fast out there. So that's a little thing. So I always think about the Val Kilmer performance in I'm Your Huckleberry. Okay, Jeff, do you think we could get into some fun facts?
We can do that. Gotta get back. Okay, fun facts. The original script called for filming on an outdoor location, but due to budget constraints, filming took place in the studio. Budget constraints also prevented the set designers from building a complete Western town, so the concept of pieces of a town drawn from Kirk's mind was developed.
It works. I think it works, considering there's a.
It works.
It's. Yeah.
For the third season, the velour tunics from the first two seasons have been replaced by polyester ones, which are better fitting but lack the luster of the original velour. The new fabric was a heavy diamond weave, nylon double knit material akin to that used in the professional baseball uniforms. The switch was made because the original velour shrank every time it was dry cleaned. This was a problem because union rules require that costumes be cleaned before each use.
Okay. So thank you for bringing this fun fact up, Jeff, because I thought I noticed that these uniforms looked fresher. And even there was a whole scene where Kirk's like, "Hey, feel my shirt," and to this bartender guy who, right, and he's like, "Feels the same to me." And
that was funny.
I also noticed the colors of their shirts popped a lot more in this episode than they usually do.
A lot more. They looked really good, the shirts in this episode, and this was the first episode they shot for
these
season 3.
Uniforms do not look much different than the uniforms in the 2009 movie, the ones they're wearing right now in that picture.
Not really, except they don't have that texture.
That's the only thing.
Like
they don't have that texture, but they're the diamond weave kind of idea.
I actually thought that the uniform looked great with this gun holster thing on there. It actually
well, they kind of did that in
yesterday.
They do that in yesterday's Enterprise, right? They kind of have like holsters like that, right? That they always have.
Yeah, or like belts and stuff and things like that hold your gun and your communicator or whatever. I just thought it was actually a nice. It actually gives it a good look.
Okay. The writing of this episode was influenced by NBC executives who wanted Chekhov to be featured more in the third season than he had been in the second season, which I noticed too, that Chekhov was used more than he usually is.
Heartthrob Walter Koenig.
Also, no Sulu in this episode.
He got a kissing role.
Yeah, that.
You got a kiss. You got a lot of kissing with that lady.
Kirk was probably pissed.
One.
I mean, he's like, "What the hell? I'm the one that gets the ladies."
Yeah, probly.
Don't worry, we're gonna shoot him. We're gonna shoot him.
He's like, "That's
Billy.
All right, that's acceptable as long as you kill him." 'Cause, 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 Okay, so for written by Lee Cronin, the pseudonym of Gene L. Kuhn, some have assumed that it was used because he was unhappy with the results. Actually, it was because he had left Paramount and was under contract with Universal, so he was not supposed to be working for Paramount as well.
Oh, okay. Who's that? Gene L. Kuhn?
Well, Lee Cronin is his real name, but he went by the pseudonym Gene L. Kuhn, who officially wrote this episode, which is basically his like a fake name he used. So he could use
See that name all the
right,
time.
so he could work for both companies at once. The episode was first broadcast on October 25th, 1968, only one day before the 87th anniversary of the actual gunfight at the OK Corral.
87th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like at this point, it's almost 100. No, it's not quite 100 years before this, but it's a long time ago. And it was, and like we said, it was a 50-year-old. It was written 50 years after it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's of course it's going to be this glorious thing.
Right. A scene that was never filmed included McCoy/McLaury offering to share his medical expertise with Doc Holliday, played by Sam Gilman, to treat his progressing tuberculosis, which you mentioned earlier, Dave.
But he said, "No, I'm going to shoot you anyway with a shotgun."
That's right. That we can't give. We need Chekhov to kiss a girl. Okay, sorry, Bones, but not enough room. No budget. According to James Doohan, NBC executives told him to comb his hair back for the third season. Doohan hated wearing his hair this way and stopped doing so during the Tholian Web.
What? And so he's not doing his hair that way here?
Remember, normally how his like hair is like slicked back.
Yeah, it looked fine this way. I don't know why they made him do it.
They liked the look. It was all about the look back then, Dave. This was the first episode produced for the third season, but it aired as the sixth episode of the season. So, Dave, is it episode number 1?
I consider it episode number 1 because Memory Alpha does.
Right. Okay.
But Wikipedia and other sources consider it episode 6.
Right.
If Jody was here, he would be yelling at me and he would be saying, "It's episode 6. Go by with everybody else."
Dad, where do you stand on this argument?
But
is it episode 1 or episode 6?
I don't know. I'm not read up, so I'm not sure.
The original title for this episode was The Last Gunfight.
Episode 1.
Do you like that or do you like Spectre of the Gun?
I like Spectre of the Gun.
Well, I was trying to understand the title. And until you told me it was based on this other thing called, what was it called? Like Way of the Gun?
That's it.
Or something? Right, Dad said it, but or the book or whatever that guy wrote. But the whole thing was, I was like, okay, what's the Spectre part? And it's all comes down to Spock's speech, right, where he's like, "It's a Spectre. It's not a real bullet. It's blah blah blah. They will go through you."
Yeah, he explained that.
It's just an illusion.
Okay. No, this is the only episode to end with the Enterprise heading toward a planet. Usually they're leaving. Okay. Charles Seal.
Never found out what happened after that.
No. Charles Seal plays the saloon bartender. He also played a Western bartender in the series Tombstone Territory. Bat Masterson, Wanted Dead or Alive, and The Guns of Will Sennett, as well as feature films The Texas Rangers and The Horse Soldiers. So he was used to playing a saloon bartender. Yeah. This is the original series' only foray into surrealism, with unique set designs by Walter M. Jeffries.
Sometimes necessity is the mother of invention.
For the incomplete mock-up of the sheriff's office, the sign with the word sheriff on it is written in the exact same font as the opening credits to the series. The F's have the same slant in the center. know if you could find that, Dave, but that, you know.
Well, I can't yet that quickly, but the Melkotians
They watched the show.
knew this. They watched the show.
Clocking in at approximately 5 minutes and 25 seconds, this episode's teaser is the second longest in the original series, lasting 10 seconds shorter than the teaser for I Mud, which I think we mentioned the last time that I Mud was the longest because it was a long one. Another difference this episode brings is the same plant background noise from the cage, used for nearly every planet in seasons 1 and 2, is replaced here by the warbling sound used before in the Gamesters of Triskelion. This will again be used intermittently throughout the series. Season 3, for example, in For the World is Hollow and I've Touched the Sky and the Cloudminders. Yeah, I mean, I did notice the sound effects were different and kind of weird. Rex Holman, who played Morgan Earp in this episode, later played the settler Jan in Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. I think so.
Wait, is that the guy with the holes in the ground? I can't believe you'd kill me for a bunch of holes in the ground.
This is the second time that McCoy
brother.
believes he cannot be harmed by a weapon. This is due to Spock's convincing in a meld. The first time, when he stands his ground as the Black Knight charges him in shore leave, this strategy was unsuccessful, as the weapon, a lance, was physically real, not merely an illusion.
Right. I was like, yeah,
it didn't work the first time. This time it worked.
Matter before, right?
In this episode, Kirk refers to the ship's phasers as phaser guns. They still hadn't gotten their vocab down. A very subtle change. Oh, what? Sorry, go ahead.
They also tried to make like phasers like more impressive. They said that the guns were almost as lethal as phasers.
Yeah, they were like crude instrument or something like that.
I was like,
but effective.
True.
A very subtle change in the third season was the use of new sound effects for the pushing of buttons on the bridge. Okay, so here's a good one. Gene Roddenberry originally wanted to film Spectre of the Gun about the gunfight at the in Arizona, either at Old Tucson Studios in Tucson, Arizona, or at Appalachian Studios in Appalachian Junction, Arizona. He found out that there was no budget to do it and had to rely on camera angles, bright colorful lights, and dreamlike sets, which added to the episode's strange alien quality.
I think it's better this way, almost. Like, if they had been out there in the sunshine in a real Western town, I don't think the episode would move as long, and I think you would lose track of what it's about, which is trying to kind of escape, really.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Some errors regarding the historical gunfight. Morgan Earp is referred to by Kirk as the man who kills on sight, when the real-life Morgan, by most reliable accounts, was an even-tempered lawman who used his gun only when he was forced to. The gunfight in the Melkotian scenario is treated as a prearranged event when actually it was more or less a spontaneous affair. The gunfight took place near the hour of 3 o'clock rather than the 5 o'clock in the episode. Finally, although it may have seemed that Chekhov's Billy Claiborne was the youngest, he turned 21 the day before the gunfight. Billy Clanton, the role played by Scotty, was at 19.
Okay. Yeah, they tried. Why change it to 5 o'clock? Why is that? Why that choice? That seems kind of arbitrary.
Because they wanted to make it look like red, and they wanted to make it look like dawn or dusk. I mean,
it's to explain the sky, but the sky's red the whole episode.
I don't know the reason. Although Sam Gilman, who played Doc Holliday, was 53 years old when this episode was made, Holliday was only 30 at the time of the gunfight at the OK Corral, and 36 at the time of his death. Chekhov is the only member of the landing party who wears a 2-holster gun belt, too, by the way. So Jerry Fielding's unique score adds atmosphere. When the villains are first seen in the saloon, Fielding has the piano play stereotypical menace notes and a bizarre rendition of Buffalo Gals. Fielding's other Star Trek contribution were he did the music for The Trouble with Tribbles.
Well, that's a good score. But this one maybe
This
a little
one is
weirder.
definitely a little weird. Greg with 2G's Palmer, who plays a rancher, previously played Tom McLaury in The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. So they have a lot of actors in this episode.
Did everyone play? How many Wyatt Earp stories did they make
lot.
in the 60s? It
A
seems
lot.
like a hell of a lot. It seems like they made more Wyatt Earp stories than they made like King Arthur stories or
Jesus.
Robin Hood or Jesus. Or, he got
After
musicals.
season 2, Star Trek was very nearly
like that.
canceled. After a fan-led campaign, a third season was finally commissioned by the network, providing a budget cut of 25% was instigated. This is why the third season has very little in the way of location filming, reused and repurposed props, and recycled special effects footage. Seasons 1 and 2 already had tight budgets anyway, so a reduced budget was always going to be noticeable. This episode is one example where the budget cutbacks started to become apparent as the producers tried to keep expenditures down.
Right. But they also had to
That's
clean
that,
those
and they
uniforms
got new
for
ones,
every
so they had to
episode.
pay for those. That was if they were going to do an under budget show, they were going to be comfortable doing it. When Spock and McCoy are discussing the tranquilizer in the bar, the table with the supplies on it that are used to make it also have doubled as a double barrel shotgun on it, whose presence goes unexplained. I don't know why that is.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. It was just there. There is a slight variation on
Yeah, I
Dr.
know.
McCoy's catchphrase. He's dead, Jim. When Chekhov dies, McCoy says, "There's nothing I can do, Jim." And that's pretty much it. That's it for fun facts.
He did play. Okay. So just let's go back to that because we're like, who played who in Star Trek V? So it was this guy, right? The guy who we said was the Sam Elliott character from the Tombstone movie. This is the guy who went on to play John in Star Trek V. The guy, that weak guy that Cybok meets at the very beginning of the movie. That's a good actor. He's unrecognizable in either role. It's 20 years apart, but kind of crazy. Okay, you want to rate this episode?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Let's do that and show on stream. Okay. All right. So, just to so you know, Adam has given a rating for this episode. He gave an 8.5.
Ooh, Adam.
So he was high on this episode. Jody is not with us tonight, so we will leave that for now. Dad, we'll start with you. Where do you want to put this?
I would go a little less than Adam, maybe an 8.3.
8.3. All right. And to Jeff?
I'm going to go like a 7. Just 7.
I'll go 7.5. Sort of meet you guys in the middle a little bit. And so that averages from the four of us at a 7.8. It has a 7.3 on IMDb with a few thousand votes, I think. Let's see, 2,200, votes. So it's about a 7.6. So this is an above average episode. And despite all these things that were sort of like weird about it, that it had no money, that it had no sets, that they had no locations, Jody
would have killed it.
Jody would. I don't know. I think Jody may. We'll see what Jody will. Yeah, I don't know if Jody would love this so much, but maybe. I'd be curious to hear what he says. Okay, so do we know where we're going next? What strange new world we may be exploring next, Dad?
Yes, I think so. The Day of the Dove.
What's that?
The Day of the Dove.
The Day of the Dove. This is a title I know, but
I think it's the 7th episode of the 3rd year, and it's one of the best episodes of year 3.
Season 3, which is the season with no money.
But it's
11. Yeah. Oh, this is the episode with Core.
It's the next episode
with Kang.
It's literally the next episode.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. So this is the Kang episode. Okay, because Kang, it's interesting because there's like the three big original series Klingons. You got Kor, Kang, and Koloth, right? And so when they brought those three back together in Deep Space Nine for Blood Oath, Kang was considered to be the greatest of all the Klingons compared to even those other two that we mentioned, Kor and Koloth. So I'm interested. I'm excited to see Michael Ansara in the role of Kang.
Would a Kang rookie be worth more, Dave, than those guys? Those other two guys?
Well, Kang, the other two actors who played those two other Klingons, I think just respected the hell out of Michael Ansara, who went on to be on Babylon 5. I want to mention too. It was a great role there, Jeff, as he was a techno mage.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Babylon 5.
So, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that next Wednesday. As it's going to be a Christmas lockdown week next week. And just to talk about our other shows and everything else, we so here on Live Long and Podcast, we do Tuesdays Deep Space Nine, where we go through each episode in a row. We're in season 2 right now. Jeff, we're trucking along, right?
Yep, we are. We're almost done season 2.
Check it out. And we got Wednesday's original series. We normally do Star Trek Discovery on Thursdays, but even though it is going to air on Thursday, but it's Christmas Eve, so we're going to do it on Saturday, Boxing Day, instead on night. Michael and Adam and I, and this Sunday on our other channel, Trivial Debates. Check out our battle that we'll be having, as we're going to have Jody Simpson in the hosting role with contestants Eamon Mater, Chris Seymour, and Tom Mott Tyrell duking it out as they argue about movies, sports, TV, and more in a live broadcast where they will test their debating skills. So make sure to check that out. And our other our stuff, Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, and we also have Star Trek Radio Theater here on Live Long and Podcast, but we're on a hiatus. We did 25 episodes this year. Go back and listen to those over the holidays. They're especially our finale, Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home, which has a great edit. And I think that's it.
Happy Festivus.
Festivus for the rest of us. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. And everything else that whatever you may be, and Festivus for the rest of us. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, thanks, Dad. There goes Dad. Okay, thanks, Jeff, and